This just happened to me in the last month or so, and I am frightened for my life. I've put my property up for sale. I do not want to live here anymore. The money, whatever, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where I have to move to. I just want out. For context for you all, I own my own plot of land and live on a farm. It's pretty hard work, but I've not struggled too hard with money, and it gives me something to do and keeps me fit as I'm starting to get a little bit older and move into my late 30s. This incident happened with the cows that I have on my farm. I got jolted from my sleep one night because I heard some kind of a ruckus. I heard one of the cows start mooing quite frantically. I'm talking like a really pained moo, and like it was struggling to even get the breath to do it. And then before I had even managed to get up off of the bed, it was cut short, like something had physically stopped it from making noise anymore. I should add that in the weeks leading up to this, the cows had been startled quite a few times in the night, and I had to go running down there to see what happened. I never really found anything, other than some tracks leading from the woods and into the mud, and so I assumed it was some wild animal, like a coyote, that was trying to get some free dinner. I don't know. Maybe it got startled and ran away at so many of those cows making noise. This time though, it was only the one, and not the whole herd making noise. I also heard something else. It sounded like wood creaking, like something with a lot of weight was standing on the wooden fences nearby, or that maybe one of the cows had smashed into it and fallen and cracked part of it. I rushed down there as quickly as I could, equipped with my high-powered flashlight. I did not have time to throw on more than a pair of nearby jeans and a raincoat over my bare chest. The second that I get within a decent distance of the cows, I noticed a few things. Firstly, there is a big streak of mud inside their grazing field. The weather had been pretty foul recently, and so the conditions were not pleasant. But there was just a big streak, almost like a mudslide, that looked like someone had put their foot wrong and tripped over ass over face. The impact was deep too. Whoever it was had to have been pretty heavy, which led me to believe that it was one of the cows. The second thing I noticed was that all of the cows were all in a huddle in the middle of the field. They were all gathered in this big, tight circle, and I could not tell what they were doing. They had their heads down to the ground, and they were all standing around. Usually, around this time, it was around 1 a.m. if I recall correctly. I would catch them laying down for a brief period before getting back up again. And when I got closer to them, I could hear more sounds. It sounded like licking and chewing. No big deal. Cows do most of their grazing during the day, but it does happen at night too. Only, when I got closer, I could see that they were not grazing at all. There was another cow on the floor, lying on its side, completely dead. It looked to have a massive hole in its abdomen, like something had just punched a big hole right through it and just let all of its insides flop out of its body. Every single one of these cows were just gathered around the corpse. They were licking the intestines spooled on the ground, licking the blood up off of the floor, seemingly nibbling at the skin of the cow, but not actually taking any of it off of the dead cow's body. I was in shock. I froze on the spot and did not know what to do, and I guess instinctively, all I could think to do was scream like a little girl. Not my proudest moment, I will admit, but there's no sense lying to you now. When I did this, basically the whole herd turned around and looked in my direction. All of them raised their heads up and dropped what they were doing. They all seemed to part, like they had intelligence, and were intentionally letting me see through the herd to get a better look. The sight of the cow on the floor just made me feel sick, but when they all moved aside, I could see another cow right at the head of this dead cow. Its eyes were shining a different color, and it just looked odd. It looked too big to be a cow, too malformed. The skin on its body looked like it did not fit right, and the color in certain places was too faded on its body, too pale, and then in other places it was too dark, or had splotches where there should not be any. This thing creeped forward ever so slowly, closer to me. And then, I wish I did not remember any of this, but this cow, it slowly just rose to its feet, onto its hind legs. When it got up, I saw some of the skin near its legs and hooves start to split and show a different color of skin right underneath. The higher it got into the air, the more the skin around its body peeled away and showed something else. When this thing finally finished standing up, it towered over me. I'm around 5'8", and this thing must have had 6 inches on me at least. I don't know what overcame me, but I just started shouting. That was all I could think to do. I just started shouting that I had a gun, that this thing needed to get the fuck off of my property, or I would call the police. I mean, how stupid could I be? As if it cared about any of that or could even understand me. And I did not even have any gun on my person. Both my shotgun and my rifle were back at my outhouse, and I was way too panicked to even think to grab them. This thing's eyes were bulging out of its sockets. They were twice as big as an actual cow's eyes, and it tilted its head to the side for just a second, and then to the other side, before opening up its mouth. It did not so much as open it, as it seemed to loosen its jaw. By the time it finished opening its mouth, and I could see the horrible, jagged teeth spaced along its top gums, its jaw looked almost dislocated. It was hanging down and did not even look like it was secured on properly. It was just hanging freely. And then this thing let out a horrible sound. It was not a moo at all. It sounded more like when a bat shrieks to try and attract a mate, but much lower pitched than this. Just the same shriek 3 or 4 times incredibly quickly. And then the herd of cows started to move. They got aggressive all of a sudden. They seemed angry and had started mooing. And then, all of a sudden, they all started to run in my direction all at once, like they were a hive mind. I just fucking ran. I ran back to my outhouse, grabbed both of my guns, and barricaded my front door. I sat up in my room all night long, taking momentary peeks outside the window to see if I could figure out what was going on. Every time I looked, I could see all of them with their heads down and eating something. I did not see that thing standing up anymore. I could not see a trace of it at all. I never saw it again after that. I was hesitant to check on the cows again the next morning, to say the least. I put it off until well past midday, because I did not know what I might find. There was no cow on the floor anymore when I finally did get there. That streak of mud and heavy impact was still there, away from where it was, but there was not even a trace of bones on the floor. The ground still looked damp, but that could have easily been the rain lingering. Let me tell you, those cows were never the same after that night. They all seemed to just stand right at the furthest fence, seemingly just looking off into the distance. I watched them day in and day out. Not once did they graze, not once. They almost straight up refused to drink any water. I would try and lead them back to the barn to drink and for milking, but they just refused. Usually, they would be making all kinds of sounds and basically be happy when it's time to be milked. It gives cows a sense of relief, and it's something that they actually enjoy. But they just refused, and so I had to begin milking them out in the field and bringing water to them. They would just stand there and not react at all when I would milk them. They would just stay dead silent and stare off into the forest just beyond the hill, like they were empty husks. The only time I ever saw them graze or drink any water is when they would stand there for 24 hours with no breaks and eventually just collapse. Only then would they drink or eat. Only when they were on the verge of death is what I would guess. After that, they would go right back to it, of just standing there. I remember it got to the 4th of July. I don't have that many neighbors in the area, but teenagers like to sneak into the nearby fields in the woods and set off whatever illegal fireworks that they could acquire. This usually drives the cows nuts. They hate loud sounds like that, and it absolutely terrifies them in the same way it does dogs. They can faint if the sounds are too close or too sudden, and it really distresses them. So usually I would take them into the barn where I can try and dampen the sound a little and try and comfort them. Not this time. They did not care at all. They did not so much as flinch or moo, and they once again refused when I tried to lead them to the barn. I was at my wit's end. One of those nights, I heard those idiot teenagers screaming in the woods after setting off fireworks. I never saw them personally, but I guess they either injured themselves by being idiots or were just trying to scare each other. I'm not sure if it's related, but I heard the entire herd start mooing in unison while these kids were screaming, almost like they were howling, as odd as that sounds. I tried to buy some more cows and integrate them to make up for this odd behavior and lost profit, also to replace the one that died. I know you probably think I'm foolish for not leaving that first night, but I just tried to make excuses and explain it away in my head. Plus, someone still had to take care of them. I just couldn't abandon them, abandon my life. The one cow that I let into the pen, the new one, they were really aggressive towards it. They would bump it with their heads and try and shove it away. They would form circles around the edge of that fence and not let the new one get anywhere near, and they would make these horrible sounds to get it to go away. They only let up and went back to their staring once the new cow had finally had enough and went to graze at the opposite end of the pen. I shit you not, the next morning when I went to check on it, it was gone, just gone. I know the difference between all of them because of the ear tags that I put on them all. The new cow was just gone in the dead of the night without me hearing a single sound, and I'm a light sleeper. That was my last straw. That is why I'm writing this here. I can't do this anymore, and I am frightened to death. Does anyone know what the hell that thing was that I saw, and what the fuck happened to my cows? I can't do this anymore. I need to sell this place and get the hell away. I have a few work-related stories from my hometown that I can post. So, when this happened, I was a 20-year-old college student. I was working in a shitty gas station booth type place that's attached to a supermarket. The booth itself is located a bit off-site on the other side of this huge parking lot, but the supermarket owns the place. The booth faces the store with a huge wooded area directly behind it. The door to the booth faces into the woods. The window in the booth is bulletproof, but it only covers the front, so you cannot see directly to the left or the right of the booth. I've been working there a few months when this nasty storm hit the area. The rain was so bad you could barely see 10 feet in front of you. There was flooding all over the place, but the supermarket straight up refuses to close the booth down. So I show up for my 5 to 11 p.m. shift in the pouring rain. 3 hours into my shift, the power goes out due to the storm, which by this point has gotten downright apocalyptic. It's pitch black out there, and the rain is coming down hard, so I decide to sit tight in the booth while I wait for a manager or something. Phones are down. I cannot call into the store. Nobody is buying gas either. So I decide to just start doing my booth chores, like cleaning the counter, counting cigarettes, tidying the drawer, etc. The picture on the screen is kind of what the booth looks like, minus the windows on the sides, and surrounded by woods instead of more parking lot. Now, this next part will require a bit of background information, so just bear with me. The booth is supposed to be locked at all times, but one of the new hires managed to break the key off inside the lock. So one of our managers broke the lock so that we could get back in. And that lock still had not been replaced, but we were told to pretend that the door was still locked. The door still had a deadbolt, but I found it annoying to fool with, so I mostly just left it unlocked. So whenever I would go to open the door, I would pretend to put the key in and make an audible sound, like a lock being opened. Okay, so back to me sitting in the unlocked booth, in the pitch black pouring rain. I am in the middle of my chores when I hear something outside the booth, like a muffled sort of splashing sound. I put my ear up against the door. I can hear what is clearly someone walking around the booth in the rain before stopping right in front of the door. Before I can kick myself for not locking it, I hear that lock click sound, followed by the most dreadfully quiet couple of seconds. I am waiting to die to some serial killer or crackhead, when suddenly the footsteps start splashing back into the woods. I quietly shit myself and lock the deadbolt while I wait out my shift. I could occasionally hear the footsteps outside, but it never tried to open up the door. The manager drives over in a truck to close me out for the night. I'm kinda new there, so I didn't want to seem like an asshole. I never mentioned it to him or anyone else at the store. A few months later, the kid I was training told me he had heard footsteps real late one night during a storm. Thankfully, the lock has been replaced since then. I tell him it was just nothing, but not to open the door if he thinks there is something out there. Okay, so I do have one more from when I was still working at the booth. I was the second oldest person working out there, so I would sometimes get calls from younger coworkers when they would mess up. On this particular night, I was off, but I got a call from this high schooler who I will call Ria. It's 9:30 p.m. She's hysterically saying something about her trainee being missing. She's sobbing quite a lot. I tried to get her to call the cops or something if he has been kidnapped, but she insists that she cannot call the cops because they would not believe her. I ask her why she has not told a manager. She cries some more and says that they would not understand. I agree to go out there and calm her down. I get dressed, go out there, and park next to the booth. There are no customers around, and the girl is just standing in the booth, staring at the door. She spots me, opens the door, and starts sobbing, telling me to hurry inside. Eventually, I get her to stop crying long enough to tell me what happened. Apparently, she was training this new guy called Matt. He was an older guy, about my age. She said the dude felt off, like he was a robot or something. She said he kept staring at her like he was in a daze, and several times he just stopped talking mid-sentence. She would try to address this with him and ask him if he was okay, but he would just ignore her when she said anything like this. She started to get really uncomfortable and is about to call into the store about him when he starts sort of humming. She described it as kind of like if someone was attempting to imitate a purring cat, like they were breathing really heavily and buzzing at the same time. So she reaches for the phone. He reacts by grabbing her hand and just staring at her. She is bawling her eyes out at this point and begging him to stop. He lets go of her hand and then opens the door. He sprints off into the woods out of sight. She said that he came back a few minutes before I got there and asked to be let back in, but she refused, so he just ran back into the woods. I think that maybe she was being dramatic or lying just to save face. Regardless, that story was pretty messed up, and we needed to call the cops or something at least. So, I tell her that we are going to call the cops, and that we are going to walk into the store and wait for them. She does not want to go outside. She says she can almost feel him waiting out there. I say screw it. She can stay in the booth and call the cops while I make sure that the tree line is clear. I take this shitty flashlight I stashed out there after the first story. I go outside and start scanning the tree line. Suddenly, the hair stands up on the back of my neck as I hear the humming noise. It sounds kind of like cicadas mixed with breathing. I look inside the booth. She is curled up in the chair, staring to my left. I book it back inside, but I left the keys with her, and she is not getting up to let me in. I am pounding on the door while screaming at her to just let me in. The humming stops abruptly as I hear something behind me and to the left. It's Matt. He is standing just on the edge of the trees. My panic intensifies. At this point, Ria finally lets me into the booth, and I immediately deadbolt the fucker. Matt is outside, asking to be let back in. He says he's sorry, and that he got a bit nervous back there. He is circling the booth while he does so, just repeating the same couple of excuses and asking to come in. This continues for maybe 5 minutes before the cops arrive, and Matt just bolts into the woods. I end up having to explain to both the cops and our manager what happened, leaving out the weird humming. As far as I know, Matt never showed up, so they fired him, and Rhea quit eventually, and that was the end of that. I was never particularly close with Rhea since she was still in high school when I was in college, so we never really talked about what happened. So, I have no idea what actually happened that night. Maybe Matt was just some doped up junkie who could make some really weird noises. I don't know. Okay, so I have a story from my grandpa. My family uses oil lamps during the nights. My grandpa is told to go downtown to get more oil for the night. My grandpa forgets all about it and just keeps messing around. It is getting dark, and his parents are pissed that he did not go. He is told to go anyway or else. The main village is around 1 hour away, and there is only a dirt road. Grandpa goes in the plain dark. He is freaked out because of all of the spooky stuff that people talk about. He is not even halfway there when he hears movement in the bushes. My grandpa was spooked already, so he just ran away towards the village. When he finally got tired and had to stop running, he looked back and could not see a thing. He keeps looking back from time to time. He sees something black on the dirt road, just where he was seconds ago. He thinks it's a shadow from one of the trees. He keeps walking by pretty quickly because he is still really spooked. He turns back and it is there again. It seemed to have moved forward. Grandpa runs again and reaches a slope. He goes past it and looks back. The thing is not there. Grandpa now relaxes and keeps on walking. He looks back at the slope where the trees do not block the moonlight, and it is there again. It was in the slope. Grandpa describes it as just a black mass or a blob. Not particularly big, but big enough to be a threat. Now he saw the blob moving fast towards him. Grandpa keeps running and looking back for a while. There was always this thing following him, but never seemed to be able to get him. Grandpa was scared nonetheless and kept on running. He got to the village. It was illuminated and he saw people, so he relaxed. He went to the general store to get the oil on a canister that he had. Now he had to go back. There was no other road to go home. He had to go walk the same road again or go through the woods and bushes. He thinks on it for a while and decides to first check the dirt road. He goes through it slowly. The thing is nowhere to be seen. He keeps walking for a while, looking back after each couple of steps. He looks back out of nowhere and the blob is at him again. This time it is closer and he manages to get a better look at the thing. The only detail he could see before he got the hell out of there was that it had heavy, thick hair, and it was using it to display/crawl like thousands of extremities, if that makes sense. Grandpa describes it similar to this picture, only it did not have the elongated shape of a worm. It was more rounded like, and the hair and extremities were not pointy. Grandpa tries to run as fast as he can, but forgets that he is carrying the canister. If he spills the oil, he will be in a lot of trouble. He goes as quickly as he can without spilling the oil. The blob is getting closer and closer as he cannot run now. He can hear the sounds of thousands of thick hairs moving the dirt. He also remembers a heavy stench that made him gag and almost puke. Grandpa could not resist all of those sensations at the same time. He placed the canister right next to a tree and ran all the way home. When he got home, he puked. His parents were pissed because of the oil, but they were also concerned because of the state that Grandpa was in. They decided to go through the night without oil and check the next day. The next day, Grandpa goes down the dirt road with his dad. Sure enough, the oil was in the exact same place that Grandpa left it, and there were strange markings on the road. My great-granddad believes Grandpa, because why would he leave the oil there, knowing that getting home without it was a guaranteed beating? Both my grandparents moved out to the city around the 1960s. Fast forward to the 1980s. My mom is visiting family in the same village. There is now electricity. My mom and some aunts go to church. They pass next to a corn crop field. When they go back from church, they see something black on the road. They thought it was a pile of trash or some black bags that someone left there. They got close. The thing seemed to notice them and started moving, and displaced and crawled towards the crop field. They could not get a look at the thing, but it seems to match what Grandpa saw. Okay, so I have never shared my story anywhere before. I've been having these visions and hallucinations, or visitations, I guess you could call them. And last night was awful, so here goes. I live in Western Canada. I have never had any spooky or paranormal experiences until I'm about 9 or 10 years old. The first time, I'm sitting at home alone, about 25 to 40 minutes before my dad should get home from work. I have no video games, only basic cable, so I'm reading a book about Rome. I look up to see a hooded figure dart behind the doorframe. I am scared shitless, thinking I'm gonna be abducted. I stare silently at the doorframe. Eventually, my dad comes in and checks the apartment. Nobody is there. He says I probably just saw a shadow or imagined it. A few months later, it's early fall. School had just started. I am laying in bed when I feel like I'm being watched. I open up my eyes and it's there. It basically just looks like a dude wearing a cloak and a hood, kinda like a monk's robes, I guess. This is the part that always messed with me. The thing speaks. It sounds simultaneously like one of the softest, most relaxing voices ever, and also a booming shout inside my head. I can never remember what it says, but I'm never afraid while it is speaking. I wake up the next day. I assume it was a nightmare and try to forget all about it. Several weeks later, it's the evening. It's dinner time soon. I'm playing with Lego. It's there. The thing is there. It's just standing there in front of my little tower of bricks. This is the first time I ever got a look underneath the hood. The thing had no eyes, no skin, no lower jaw. It was just a bare deer or a small horse skull. I'm not afraid, but I know I should be. I suddenly get called for dinner. The thing vanishes like it was never there. This type of thing continued on for years, even after I moved out when I turned 18. Very recently, I found out that my aunt had schizophrenia and one of my brothers has schizoaffective disorder. I consult my doctors and the psych staff. Hell yeah, free healthcare. Last night, the thing comes back. I try to ignore him. For the first time in my life, I remember what he says to me. Do you truly doubt me? Reach out then and feel me. Know me by my presence. It's that same booming yet relaxing voice that seems to be coming from inside my own head. I reach out slowly. I touch the fabric of this robe or gown-like thing. I suddenly feel sick. I feel this extreme wave of emotion out of nowhere. The thing just vanishes once again. I still feel sick and uneasy nearly 24 hours later. That's it. I have some more memories and details, but he has never felt threatening or malicious. I don't have the genetic marker for schizophrenia or its related disorders, but I don't know. It could be an entity, or it might be an illness. If you have any idea what it is, I would be happy to listen. I had an experience with a black-eyed child around 16 years ago. I went outside to smoke a cigarette with my friends in a park close by to my house. The day was overcast. It was a bit cold and fairly calm, with no one else really around. We finished smoking the cigarette. We were poor and also underage, so we only had the one to share, and me and my 3 other friends run back to my house through the field. I didn't feel like running, so I slowly walked towards my house, looking down at the ground as I did. As I approached the end of the field, I looked up, and noticed a small kid dressed in a yellow rain suit that could not have been older than maybe 5 years old. I started to have thoughts in my head that it may be a lost child because I could not see any parental figure nearby, and we were pretty far away from houses. I thought I should ask them if they were lost, and if they were distressed, I could bring them home so I could call the police and find the kid's parents. When I got to be about 1 to 2 feet away from the kid, he looked up at me, and I noticed that his eyes were completely black. No white and no color at all, just pure black. At that moment, an intense feeling of fear and foreboding came over me, and the environmental surroundings and time seemed to completely stop. I could not perceive any sound. I stood there, staring at the kid for what was probably 30 seconds, but it felt like so much longer, before I started running away from the kid and back to my house. I don't remember much from that day, and I never talked about it until almost 5 to 8 years after the experience. I wasn't really into the paranormal before this experience, but I did also see a large stationary UFO prior to this with another friend, my brother and his friend.